Hello and welcome to another episode of Still Talking. I'm your host, Kicker Shaver, and I am back in the classroom, ladies and gentlemen, and we are here discussing, of course, the final episode, the Supine. We've made it all the way through a 5-part series. From the last episode, we learned that I'm not the guy that focuses very well. So here we are back in the classroom. We're going to discuss this final term, supine, in this 5-part series. We've already gone through the choleric, the melancholic, the phlegmatic. Sorry, let's do them in order. The choleric, the phlegmatic, the melancholic, and the sanguine. Now we're on this 5th one because so far we've covered those 4 are based on Hippocrates' temperament theory. And what that's going to do, I'm going to swipe this out of the way, keep myself on focus. That's going to focus on a much later discovery in the supine temperament, which was discovered in 1984. I don't have an exact reference for the group that did it, but definitely worth mentioning. I think they're a Christian group that did this research, and out of like 1,000 people, they found this algorithm for that 5th temperament. So if we're going to reference all of those other 4, we're going to take this one and separate it from those 4, and it's going to relate really closely to this one here, the phlegmatic, as we're discussing on this here particular show. So I am going to get myself stood up nice and slowly so I don't kill myself here, and make sure that you guys get a good view. And of course, on comes the Page of Wonder lab coat. And as we get introduced, I will go ahead and cover a couple of topics I definitely want to go through. I have myself a list prepared of things that we are looking for through the Already Perfect Enterprises. And right now, just there's a large conglomerate pending. So what we're looking for right now is people like video editors, digital arts marketing promoters, producers, coordinators. Pretty much, if you've seen the show, the movie or the show, and afterwards and beforehand, you see all of the names pop up. We need all of those people. I've got a lot of projects in the works, and of course, there's a lot of editing for the material that I have here. Sometimes I do tend to drone on, so I definitely need some shifts, and some graphics work would be really great to add to this. That is not one of my strengths for sure. Definitely task related, and you know, you guys see what I'm doing in the task background right here, which for someone like me is pretty remarkable because I really don't task well. I'm more of a people person, more of a, even a people pleaser. I really like large crowds of people, and I like seeing them happy. And then, of course, I like to go back into my recharge. So anyway, today we are talking about the supine temperament. If you're following along on the app, we're going to jump straight to it. If you don't know how to get there, kickershaver.com. Download the app if you have your Android phones. I've found it's a little more difficult through the Apple products. I don't understand yet how to get through to the Apple products to make it a simpler process. So if you guys know about Apple products, we could definitely use your advice on a link, perhaps, to download the Prezi and have easier access to this particular display, which is what's really what we're trying to get to, is this particular display. So we're going to go straight into it today. We're going to go straight into that psychology tab. I'm pretty sure that you guys still see this backwards, but I'm still going to use this display to make my points, because this makes it easier to access for you guys whenever you go into these particular fields. So back into psychology, where your personal space is known as your bubble. So this is my personal theory called bubble theory. We are the magnet in the world, and we have positive, negative, and neutral energies that we push out into the world. And whether you care, you don't care, or you're wounded by it, all of those relating to the positive, negative, proton, neutron, electron, all of those 3 things that make up the body, mind, and spirit. Of course, the psyche is made up by the mind, the soul, and the breath. What you breathe in from the world and what you breathe out from your world. So we are going straight into psychologists right down here in this bottom bubble. And we'll just click on that one time. I really like that about these particular ones. Again, we're going into the fathers of psychology here. and we're going to go into my personal favorite, as we always continue to talk about in this particular series, Hippocrates. And of course, we will be coming to do more episodes in these other fields as well, because you should know about Freud, the id, ego, superego, stuff like that. But let's stay on point for now, and I'm going to Hippocrates, and we have the humors. I haven't gone over this in this series so far, so I'm going to go ahead and discuss it in this last series. And I'm going to go ahead and take my time on this one. I know these have been long series, but I'm going to take my time on this one to get a good penetrating view on this entire ideology. So, the four humors of Hippocratic medicine. Again, Hippocrates was really well known for his medicine side of things when he was the father of medicine, but he really wasn't as strongly considered as he should be for his temperament theory, as we've been discussing. And I'm sure that you've located a lot of your own temperaments in this so far, because that covers most people. So air, earth, water, and fire. Again, I got to do the research on the gentleman. I think his name starts with an E, which is where Hippocrates kind of based that off of. And then going into that sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, and melancholic are the ones that we discovered already in these past series, talking about all of those. So linking that into this Hippocrates, where I have the four temperaments theory. And of course, the fun part is that there's actually five in there. If you're paying that close attention, then we're going to go down here into the supine temperament. So these are all available online. All of these images are available online, so you can go and do this research there as well, and find your own strengths and weaknesses. The same way that I've learned this stuff, I call it Google University. You have access at your fingertips to most of mankind's knowledge right there on your phone. It's just asking the right questions. I love that quote from that movie, I, Robot, where Will Smith is standing with that gentleman. I can't remember the actor's name. I love that guy too. But they're having a conversation with a hologram platform, and the hologram says, you got to ask me the right questions. And that's really the root of all knowledge, is going to be the questions that you ask yourself on succeeding and failing and light and dark and all of those. So we're going to go straight in like we always do. We're going to jump into the weaknesses. So in the weaknesses of the supine, what you're going to find is common anger at the world, and it's not going to be something that's going to be outwardly necessarily shown until that they've been put into a position of weakness, to where they're just kind of just constant state of anger. So hurt displayed in anger, and this is typically going to be when they've had their emotions kind of crushed down into such a platform. It's like dynamite. You know, you just pack that powder deeper into this dynamite stick, and what you're going to get is this enormous explosion from a small amount of space, because they compact that anger into that one spot. It's really dangerous if you're a supine in this area, because those are the people who, you know, could potentially go postal, because they just lose all of their sense of loyalty with humanity and break. So that's a very dangerous. Of course, that's a very harsh extreme. It's not every supine's going to do that, but it is a great danger that compressing your pains instead of expressing them, and really expressing them is a big point that I make, as you see on kind of my life on Facebook, is I'm very expressive about my emotions and what I'm going through, but I'm cautious on how I display it. So again, back to that being responsible with emotions, that's what adulthood is. That's what maturity is being responsible with your own emotions. So feelings worn outside is again, if you'll see that I've had in the past, and if you kind of backdate my history even on Facebook, I've had my own personal experience with my feelings being worn outside, and even kind of just discussed it. But again, going back to that maturity on how you display it and what you say. So these feelings being worn outside can be very dangerous, because feelings, as you'll discover in my personal theory, feelings and emotions are some of the most common deceivers in human psyche. We find ourselves in a position to where we feel a certain way based on a thought that we've had that doesn't necessarily even have any truth. And my favorite example is that you might be sitting next to someone and, you know, they might be having a bad day or whatever and have a scowl on their face. And then you personify, you make it about you. And then in the process, what you do is you think that maybe they think something bad about you. And while you're sitting there, these feelings have your emotions stirred up. And of course, your emotions are felt in your body when your body releases the endorphins, if you will, that go into your bloodstream to make your body feel a certain way on your adrenal glands inside your body. So with your feelings being displayed, what you do is you can find yourself in a position where you're irresponsible with your emotions. And it's just not a healthy way to display who you are, because that typically, especially when it's anger that's displayed by the hurt, you'll find yourself apologizing for kind of existing, because you're constantly in a state of snapping at people and making poor choices with your words. And of course, words have the most lasting effect in all humanity. Words are what we study to have knowledge from yesterday. So we write it down and that's how it happened. Or we have a thought and so on and so forth. So words describe everything. So when we feel certain ways and they don't necessarily attach to reality, it's in that what if that I talked about in the melancholic world, where your what if reality has you stained in your feelings to where your feelings just keep feeling that way and you can't get your mind off of it. So this is definitely in the weakness side of the supine that you have to be really careful for. Even if you're not supine, if you have these things in your life, it's really dangerous to have those. So indirect behavior, again, when we go back to that, really the display of emotions may be there, but the words to describe the emotions might not. And that's dangerous if you're using indirect behavior in such a way as to refuse yourself the ability to express what you're needing to express to get things done. Then what it is you're expecting other people to read your mind. And that's a big danger, because if you expect other people to read your mind, then you're expecting them to know your future and tell you, you have to hear everything through what they believe, and you're never expressing your own true self. So the indirect behavior is super dangerous, and it makes you have to be cunning in order to get your point across. And then at the end of it, that indirect behavior can lead to the hurt displayed by anger. And it just makes for a really kind of, if I can use the word ugly, it makes for an ugly presence if you're constantly in this state. So it's very dangerous. The reactive behavior, again, where you compress that dynamite and then all it takes is somebody to put one little spark to it, and then the fuse goes off and boom. So that reactive behavior, if you're reacting to something, it means you're not responding. And responding basically means that you've given process to your thought and you've been able to consider its value, whether it's true or false, and then present your rebuttal. A reaction is like, if you slap yourself in the face just out of the blue, it doesn't make any sense. But if a fly lands on your face and your reaction just has you tap your face, it's reactive to do such a thing where it wouldn't normally make sense. So reactive behavior is going to be more impulsive. And what you want to do is, there's a chapter in my book that I'm writing, and I'm still, working on it. And it's related to intent versus instinct. And when you behave in your intentions, you're more thoughtful in your actions. And when you're behaving in your instinct, you really don't put any thought to it. You rely on your body to just perform, and your brain doesn't have to do any calculations. So this reactive behavior, very dangerous, toxic to your own mind, because it makes you look foolish when you can't behave in such a way as to control your own emotions. Insatiable desire to be loved and feel invited. and really in such a way to where it's not something that can be filled. When somebody gets invited into a group, or let's say somebody gets invited to a party and then there's a group sitting around a table, they would be the ones sitting outside waiting for someone to invite them over. And after a while, if no one invites them over, they would be offended that nobody invited them over. That's just one example of the idea that this insatiable desire to be loved and feel invited is dangerous, because it can make you have unrealistic expectations of the people around you, to where you make yourself uninvited, and then that way you can maintain this feeling for that insatiable desire, because it can't be fulfilled. And here's the idea is, in this series, the idea is to find out what these strengths and weaknesses are, so you can calculate your own life to find this root of this weed, because this is what the weeds are. And you're going to uproot that stuff out of your life as best as you can. So that insatiable part is going to come with your own personal value. The most important thing for a supine to understand is their own personal value, because they're, on the flip side, we're going to see what they are and their strengths, and that's going to be the givers, the lovers, the devout, the loyal. So we're gonna go back over there, but for now, let's stick on that word insatiable. If you've got these insatiable desires in your life, they're likely to be weaknesses. Even if it's an insatiable desire for another human being, it's got to be something to where you're even that last post I put up about balancing, what you got to listen and you got to talk. I'm going to do some things different because of some comments that were put on my last show, because I babble a bunch. So I'm going to try to keep things on point better, and I'm going to try to be a little more entertaining too. So, I do like to listen to my listeners. So if you guys have comments, pour them on. I'm happy to learn from you as much as I want for you guys to learn from me, from all this research that I've done and sharing this knowledge that I've gained. So let's move forward back into this insatiable desire to be loved and invited. That oversensitivity. We already talked about hurt displayed by anger, feelings worn outside, being oversensitive. Kind of back to that story to where you're standing outside of this circle at a party you've been invited to already, and everybody's already waiting for you to join the circle, and you're just holding yourself outside the circle, being overly sensitive to everything. Now, here's another danger about this, is that word empathy. Empathy is a beautiful thing if you learn how to have it. But if you don't learn how to have empathy, EM means to feel and path means suffering. So empathy means to feel suffering. And it's really not a comfortable world. If you look at the world around you, there's a lot of thorns. There's a lot of people who just, they're angry. They wear their thorns outside. And a lot of the weaknesses of this particular character hurts itself by seeing other people who are hurt. And of course, in any situation, when you see somebody else hurt, your empathy inside you will feel hurt for them, if you have such a thing. Empathy and sympathy, very similar, but much different. We'll talk about that another time. So, overly sensitive, highly dangerous if you're overly sensitive. So, unsure when to enter and exit kind of goes back to that insatiable desire to feel loved and invited. If you don't know when to leave or when to show up, it can make you uncomfortable to walk in the room at all. And in a lot of cases, and a supine can convince themselves not to go somewhere because even though they've been invited, they still don't feel invited, and they'll damage themselves in such a way as this is where you find a lot of the phobias that come in life when it comes to fears of this and that, because the world has those sharp edges we talked about. It makes it harder for the supine to see where the roses are through all the thorns. So, bitter, spiteful grudge holder, unspoken rage. We kind of talked about that earlier already. We talked about packing that stuff down instead of speaking up and saying, hey, you know what? This isn't okay for me. This isn't copacetic with my lifestyle. This is not what I'm looking for in my life. So I really would rather it to go a different way. Instead of speaking up and making it known, having that unspoken rage, fearful of rejection. We talked about this with that unsure when to enter and exit and being invited a bit, to where that fear of rejection will stop someone from even engaging in a conversation or presenting themselves for lack of personal value. the most common lowest self-esteem person type is going to be found with the supine temperaments and, of course, the melancholics. So the other three, choleric, phlegmatic, and sanguine, normally do pretty well with self-confidence. So fearful of rejection, very strong in my life. I've not only suffered a lot of rejection, but I've also I've overcome that fear of rejection, but still experience the fear when it comes to walking on a stage at a new place. You know, it's always somewhere new. And even doing this, you know, right before a broadcast, that still hits me a little bit in my guts. So that fear of rejection really available for all of the temperament types, but strongest in this supine type when it really holds them down. I already talked about this expectation of other people can read your mind, and that way they can keep their unspoken rage unspoken because they expect you to read their mind instead of them speaking up and telling you what's going on. Super dangerous, guys. Even if you're not a supine, if you do this, if you don't speak up about the things that bother you, and mind you, there's a way to present it, again, with controlling your emotional side and not freaking out. You just go ahead and have a conversation with somebody who, you know, if they love and respect you, then it should go well. So, otherwise, you just, there's a way to stand up for yourself without being mean. So, again, I believe in that diabolical kindness. You'll find that in the Art of Perfect book as well. Extremely overly dependent. If you're reading this backwards, I know there's some misspells in here too. We'll get back in there. But extremely over dependence goes back into that insatiable desire to be loved and invited. If you're in that over dependence, it means that your survival makes you like a parasite. If you become a parasite, what you become is someone who drains the energy out of the resources around you without any ability to self-sustain. And it's a huge danger if you're not careful, because what that will do is it will link you to unhealthy sources of nutrients, and not all nutrients are going to be good for you. You know, you can eat the bark off of a tree, but it's really not going to be that good for you. You're going to get a little bit of nutrients out of it, but it's not going to be healthy on the other way. So, extreme overdependence is super dangerous. Something definitely worth looking out for if it's in your weakness side. Stifling feelings of powerlessness. That goes back into that fear of rejection stuff. Those stifling feelings of powerlessness makes them reduce their own value to where they don't feel like anything that they could present is going to be worth anything whatsoever. Again, back to that low self-esteem. So those feelings of powerlessness, even though they may have years of successes in their background to where, you know, they've had a lot of things performed for their lives, but yet those feelings of powerlessness. So I'll, you know, throw myself under the bus again for this weakness. My mind still goes there. My body still experiences the feelings that are associated with stifling feelings of powerlessness. I've been around thousands and thousands and thousands of people who've built me up and told me, you know, you're so smart. You know, I've been accused of being genius. Of course, on the flip side, I've been accused of being stupid and having no idea what I'm talking about. But, you know, climbing up the ladder of greatness, I've had people tell me such wonderful things about myself, yet still before a broadcast, I'll wonder if people care what I'm talking about with the fear of rejection, and I'll wonder if I know what the hell I am talking about my own self with my own feelings of powerlessness, even though I've got miles of jobs that I've done, which we're going to do some broadcasts about old jobs that I've done, especially when I find that group of people who can help me do the graphics, if in fact you are out there wanting to help. So I'm going to stay on target here. Stifling feelings of powerlessness. Threw myself under the bus about that whole situation. So as you can see, that this is a major portion of my life as well, but this is in my control level. If you go back to old broadcasts, and we'll probably do more on this as well, but the control, affection, and inclusion level. And this level for me the control level, I've got a combination of sanguine and supine. So deep need for reassurance, that kind of goes right back into this insatiable desire for love and invitation, and the fear of rejection. Those kind of link in together. That need for reassurance means that somebody has to tell you that you have value instead of you just believing you have value. So that deep need for reassurance is a huge danger if you don't learn how to self-soothe. It's kind of like if you there's always a constant argument with whether you leave a baby cry in the crib if they're just crying, instead of if they're well fed and they're changed and they're in good health, and you just know that they're crying, it's okay to let them self-soothe, is really what the science behind it claims. And I'm definitely a believer in it, because it teaches a child to have a little more self-confidence, especially when they learn how to rest and truly rest, especially through the night. So that deep need for reassurance, linking into that infant state to where that extreme overdependence fits in. So extremely dangerous, deep, unfulfillable need for love. We kind of already covered that, so doubled that up. So we'll go back in there, fix that. Difficulty initiating things. Associated but not procrastinating. I don't even know what that means. That's a typo. So I'm going to have to go back in there. Difficulty initiating things, especially when it's related to something that they're doing. Like if they're on their own tasks, then it's really difficult for them to get started. However, on the flip side, if they've been tasked with specific guidelines, they're really, really good at following those. We'll find that on the flip side. Difficulty getting invited. Even though, again, I get invited tons of places, and until recently, I was, you guys went through that crazy session of life with me when I was dying. Somehow I'm up, my back is still killing me and my shoulder hurts like crazy, but I'm alive again, and I'm really thankful, because it's been a long time, guys. I didn't think I was going to have this back, so I'm going to not go too far into that, because I'm going to stay on target again. But it's ridiculous that I'm even alive. I didn't think I was going to be this again. So still in pain, but my heart's been pretty great. So I've had a bad couple of days, but anyway, back onto this thing, and we'll talk about that on another episode where I'll fill you guys in on what's been going on health-wise. So, difficulty getting invited. So that kind of links into a lot of the stuff we've already talked about. Expecting others to read your mind instead of saying, hey, you guys are having a party, what's going on? And there's a couple of YouTube videos where these guys just go out and they invite themselves to parties, kind of like, Wedding Crashers, but they do it on the beach. They would just go up and introduce themselves and get themselves invited to meals, and it's a strong tactic to pay attention to when it comes to the psychological side of making friends immediately. And that's another thing that will prevent you, if you have this fear of rejection. It's really hard to make good friends because that fear of rejection keeps you uninvited. So the difficulty getting invited is because you don't speak up, and that unspoken rage gets to set in against that other person for not inviting you somewhere. So difficulty getting invited. Generally fearful. I'm going to throw myself in here and say I was a terrified child. I was afraid of everything. And then later in life as an adult, I had strong phobias. I became so OCD, I would feel like I needed to grab a napkin so I could grab the salt shaker in a restaurant, because I would think about horrible things. So my general fearfulness kept me in a state of comfort, because I knew what I was afraid of. I knew those things to be concrete in my life, and there was comfort in it. And it's a dangerous place to be, because it will limit you from everything. I have so many regrets based on those fears. And then, of course, the opinions of others around me because of those phobias. I felt so weak in myself when I discovered my strength in overcoming all of these things and becoming something stronger, which you'll see on the flip side. So when it comes to that general fearfulness, one specific memory is when my mother and my sister and I think my best friend was there. They were all going up in a ski lift in Arizona, and had never been up one, but my terrifying fear of heights kept me from moving. So I told them, enjoy dying. If you're not back in a couple of days, I'll just, leave me the keys. So that general fearfulness just stifled me from doing so many things in that past. And I'll even say this, for my own personal life, when I was a young man, I was growing out of my fears or certain fears anyway, and I had a terrifying fear of horses, and that's represented right here. You guys have seen the kicker sticker. So right here, the horseshoe, that represents my time with Larry Mahan, where I overcame my debilitating fear of horses after being traumatized as a child, where I was riding it and he laid down on me for a while and wouldn't get up or move. So I thought I was trapped because nobody was around to help me. So I was very young, and it was not healthy for my mind. And I really didn't have, again, I was very fearful. I was just generally fearful. So that fear, overcoming it, I went to work with my best friend on a legendary rodeo champion's horse ranch and got to go and learn the smartest things I've learned as an animal person. The things that he taught me are exactly what he said they would be. He said, anything you think you know about being a cowboy, I need you to forget, because I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. I'm the world's best. And he wasn't wrong. His animal psychology, very, very simple. He said, your animal's already doing what you want. You just have to teach them how to do it over and over again and praise them for it. When your dog jumps up on you, don't tell your dog, get down. Tell them, good job, you jumped up. And then they'll jump down, and you tell them, good job, down. And now when you say down, it's going to make more sense to them because they were already doing it. So just support what they're already doing. Brilliant mindset from the mind of Larry Mahan, legendary rodeo champion. Shout out to you, bro. It's awesome that I've got that story in my life, and I thank you for doing that. It was 80 hours. Sorry, I believe it was about $80 a week. And we worked good, long, 16, 17 hours, sometimes, 24-hour days, time out, learning how to be a man and learning from the best. So it's really highly encouraged looking up that guy too, if you don't know who Larry Mahan is, because he's a timepiece in this American history where the rodeo cowboy it's just the time when he was a rodeo cowboy was just so legendary. It's sad that rodeo doesn't have as nearly the large compass it used to, but also understanding how the world turns. So as we continue forward, I'm going to go ahead and finish this right on up. The anxious with final decisions will actually stop them from making decisions, and again, rely on everyone around them to make the schedule so that they have to follow it. So the anxious with final decisions, let's say the scenario is that you want to go eat somewhere, and you say, well, where would you like to eat? You won't get a decision out of them, even if you make the decision. They don't want to have the final decision. And here's kind of the main reason why they don't want to have the final decision. They don't want to be responsible for the outcome. The phlegmatics are, again, linked to this one, to where that procrastination to make a decision is back to the no, that's avoid responsibility is in the phlegmatic side, but it kind of fits in here too. It will make you avoid the responsibility of the decision because of the anxiety. So different reasons behind it, behind the procrastination or the prevention, but again, same result is no decision made. So extremely dangerous if you have those anxieties. And again, I haven't said this yet, but let's talk about anxiety for a second, because everybody goes through certain levels of anxieties and worries. And that's a chapter in the book: worry, anger, regret, fear, doubt, shame. All of those things are going to be useless things when you discover what this stuff can do for you in your life when you operate in your strengths, when you perform yourself in your own life, being as joyful as you possibly can through your own kindness, operating in strength in any given situation, positive or negative. You become the power in your universe, in your bubble that gives and takes and neutralizes in this world. So that refusing to decide, I kind of jumped straight ahead, but that was linked into that last one as well anyway. Refusal to decide, it's just so dangerous because it means you never get to choose what you're doing with your own life. And if you find a healthy relationship to where you're both collaborating and moving forward in the same motion, that's going to be on the strength side. So again, we're still on the weakness side, and I need to move myself forward. So easily wounded, high expectation of others. That's super dangerous. If you're having high expectations of others, it means that you set them in such a way that they can't reach them. And if you do that, you're putting other people in the position to have to please you, and you're having this need for love that they can't fulfill because your expectations are too high. It doesn't make sense logically, so it makes you emotional, and that emotion worn outside, super dangerous. So refusing the high expectation of others, hard to joke with. If you make a joke that hits a little too close to home, they just fall apart or have that unspoken rage and hold the grudge, and again, maybe even displays their wounded feelings in anger. So, hard to joke with. Refuse, pressure. We've kind of talked that already with anxious final decisions and refusal to decide. And constant need of support links into extreme overdependence. So let's jump out of here, and we're going to go back into the strengths side of this as we move forward. And here we are, not a very big list, so we're going to jump straight into that low-key kind of mentality. They really like to go with the flow. You know, if there's a certain flow and they're in their strength, remember, we just discovered the weaknesses. This is a whole different mindset behind going with the flow, not needing to make all the plans, letting other people take control, and you just kind of cruise along with whatever's going along. And if you find the right group in life to where you've got a choleric, phlegmatic, melancholic, sanguine, then you will likely fit in perfectly to be that one that goes right along with the flow. If you've seen movies, you can normally pick all this stuff out, and it's fun to play a game to where you can go through all of the characters that are being displayed and then find out even the temperament of the person playing the role. As they continue through other movies, they become typecast as their certain characters. So as they become that typecast, you can realize what their natural strengths are in their acting ability even. So, easy going, again, going with the flow, responsive. Remember we talked about that, reactive versus responsive. And the reactive part, intent versus instinct. So when you're responsive, you're going to take time, you're going to consider. Now, inconsiderate is the flip side, and considerate is the other side, where you're considering everything that you do and putting yourself in a position to be able to respond to someone else logically, having considered your emotions. That servant's heart, it's such a beautiful thing. This is where we find our caregivers. This is where we find the people who enjoy serving others and will happily bedside manner someone. And that pleasable spirit, that willingness to see other people feel joy. You'll find a lot of our philanthropists out there in the world having these strengths. Of course, there are definitely philanthropists and others, but that happiness to give, that servant's heart, that happiness to give to others, being pleasing to others, linking to the pleasable, likable, the spirit of wanting to be liked can be used as a strength in such a way as to project that servant's heart and see other people who will value that servant's heart. Again, there's going to be a flip side to this, to where if you give that servant's heart to a toxic person, they can deplete the resource and keep your well empty and dry. very dangerous if you're a supine and you find yourself in a relationship with a toxic person, especially if you, again, we talked about latching on to that bad nutrients. So let's move straight on down to dependable, gentle. Gentle, kind of talked about that already, and that gentle, likable servant's heart. Dependability, the ability to be relied upon. I talked about that already with the loyalty. I talked about it on the weakness side, but that loyalty to be able to follow their devotion or to aim their devotion into a direction when they're in their strength. They aim this particular dependability into a certain area, and that becomes a source of food to where they get to be so loyal, again, in the strength. When they find their loyalty to the right thing, they're going to find themselves being properly nourished. Upholders of laws, structures, establishments, rules. And, this is the people you will find that they like things done to the letter when it comes to things like job at a security business. They might, find out every rule, and that way if anybody else breaks them, they would be the ones who would be more likely to feel uneasy about other people doing anything outside of that particular preformed structure. Preformed, again, meaning usually that this person has come to this conclusion. That these establishments have already been put into place, and now they are upholding them. So again, somebody else being in control of the decisions. Open emotionally, we talked about the flip side to where that feelings worn outside. The flip side, positive side of this is openness and willingness to hear others with that servant's heart and give kindness as a gift. Even if someone's coming with harsh emotions, they can normally take those emotions and flip them around to at least offer that person some type of solace for their heart. So deep commitment, especially if treated properly. Again, there's the flip side to where if they're not treated properly, but someone had gotten them to commit already using some type of cunning, then they would be devoted and until that anger, unspoken rage breaks them out of it. Oh, I can't do that. Deep commitment, if treated properly. We already kind of talked about that as well when it comes to loyalty. Deep well of giving capacity is what it says, but it's capacity. A little typo there. Deep well of giving capacity. We talked about the nurses, the giving hearts, the ones, I say nurses have it harsh, but they also have it great, because they have it harsh because nobody normally comes to them with a happy face. Normally they're in pain, and pain doesn't make happy faces. But they've got it made because they get to wear pajamas to work. So that's my argument. So as we move forward, sponge for the fulfilling of needs of others. Now again, we talked about the negative side. Positive side is going to be that the fulfillment of others' needs means, let's talk about the line in the book again. Imagine the life that you can live when you learn that you can't run out of give. The wallet of love stays open and flowing until you decide to close it. So on that point, that sponge of fulfilling the needs of others makes them fed by the idea that whatever they're doing is making someone else happy, and that's a nourishment for their own heart. So you'll find ministers, you'll find people who run charities. We run the Already Perfect Foundation, and it's two Supines who are founder and vice president. So encourager, love to lift other people's up. I'm going to talk about myself in this area again too, where this is my own personal life. These tie into the things that I do now. I really enjoy the therapeutic side of what I get to do with my one-on-ones when I get to be an encourager. Normally there's so many things that the world goes through that either I've experienced or I get to at least find another way of thinking for negative situations. And it gets to be a strength in my life that I get to use as fruit. And if you kind of think of this like the garden I mentioned, we'll go back into that in a little bit, but the garden that I mentioned, these are all fruits. You know, the other side is the weeds that you got to pluck out of your garden so your fruits don't get the malnourishment. So the encouragement side lifts people up and puts them in a position to where they get to feel exalted. And it's really a great feeling. So, if you're, you know, we talk about my understanding of what I've read when I collected all of my knowledge from reading the entire Bible, I came up with the idea that the whole book is about giving. It's about love. It's about connecting with others. I mean, mind you, there's a lot of other crazy stories in there, and I'm saying the general storyline, I believe that it was about, you know, it's pretty much, I believe it's a love story. So the encouragement to lift someone up. So, my point about the Bible there was my greatest summary of the book says that you should feel like royalty. You got your own life to live. It's yours and you get to govern it. You're a celestial body walking on the earth, and you're in space. You know, you're not in the earth. You're on the top of it and walking through the air. If you think about it like that, it's kind of a magical experience that you're not crushed to the earth. So you should walk like royalty. But true royalty knows that the feet of its people needs washed. You got to find provision for your people, and everybody should be your people because they exist in your universe. This is your kingdom. Anywhere around you, your bubble is your kingdom, and you get to govern how you feel about it. And I still have this belief that when you speak good things with your intentions, that it puts a plus sign in your protons going out of your universe. And I think if you feel the opposite, that's what you're leaving behind in your trail. You know, I don't know if a dog can smell the difference, but I certainly believe that there's a trail that you're leaving that tells your story. That's why the first line in that book says that your name is the title of the book of your life and your feet pound the print on its pages. Finishing up here, smart. I'll let you guys decide. But generally, the supine is going to be a high ability to gain intellect. And it's because of that observation state. The conscientious observer. Is someone who pays attention. So the smart comes from the ability to stay quiet and observe your surroundings and watch kind of everything that's going on. So the healers, I already talked about that. You find the nurses, you find the caregivers. They're going to be the ones who are in this supine temperament. Non-invasive. On the negative side, we talked about them not knowing whether or not they're invited. To invite yourself non-invasively is to genuinely build friendships and devotion that gets you invited. So that they're using that indirect behavior that we talked about as a strength. In this particular strength side is that non-invasive personality, to where they're not going to make themselves well illuminated like the sanguine side of what I do. Happy helpers. So this one wraps up all of the temperaments, ladies and gentlemen. Happy helpers. They ties into the servant's heart. It ties into every piece of what we talked about with the supine temperament. And the word supine, to wrap up the title, to lay back, the word supine means to lay flat on the back. And if it's a harsh connection, but it's kind of like if you imagine a pet, especially a dog, that when you pet it, it will roll over and expose its belly and want all the love that you have to give it. And that comparison of a relationship between a human and that particular pet, that conscious, constant state of want for more and more affection, more love and time, and the relationship there is possible in humanity through the supine temperament. So it's a really great allegory of of the relationship that exists between a person and especially their dog. Or a lot of cats don't like their bellies rubbed. So the supine temperament relates very closely to that when it comes to the servant's heart and the desire to be loved. So wrapping this up, today I am going to sign off with the crowdfunding request. We haven't done any website yet, or I might have something on my website, but definitely looking for support in this area. My next project right now I'm working on is getting this presentation into places where I can present. So if you know of any venues that are asking for educational presentations, this is definitely something I would like to put out into the public and see what is available out there. In the meantime, sign off today. I hope, with all hope, that you go through each of these, whether you bypass all of my episodes and you just watch on the Prezi app, which is still free right now, and you can watch the other episodes to catch up on how to download the app. So my hope for you is that you learn your value in these strengths and what you can do to benefit your own life in your own strengths and overcome those weaknesses. So I did say I would do it, so I'm going to back out of here and I'm going to go into the garden. As I mentioned, this is my own personal stuff that I'm writing, so let's see here. If I learn how to get out of here. All right, into the garden we go. Strength is in the seed and weakness is the weed. So the characteristics of your strength: beneficial quality, worth, validity, advantages, assets, aptitude, skills, specialties, fortitude, tactics, talents, resilience, positive spirit, and energy. All the great things in life are going to relate to the strengths. Of course, the weaknesses are going to be the blackness and the darkness. So courage, soundness of mind, alertness, firmness, durability, quantifiable value. That means you can put a number on it. You can say, you know what, this is worth this. So the quantifiable value, measurable output, meekness, hardest word in humanity to do. Meekness doesn't mean quiet as a mouse and humble. Meekness means taking on offenses without being offended. Dare you to try it. It's really hard to do, but I've done it and it works well. So alertness, firmness, we already talked about that. Meekness, power, production, wealthy mindset, integrity, root and fruit. The nutrients that you gain and the production of it. Fruit produces seed and vice versa. Seed produces fruit. So seed, fruits, on target, intentional, in give nature. Those are going to be the strength side. Of course, I wish I had started with the weaknesses like I've been doing, but I'm going to finish up on the weakness side and then leave you with something positive. Lacking, frailty, delicacy, sickness, slumber and sleep, timidity, incapability, incompetency, poverty mindset, flip sides, impotency, vulnerability, panic, ineffectiveness, imperfection, powerlessness, irresolution, things you just can't have resolved, inadequacy, dishonesty, infirmity, depression, stress, feebleness, lowness, the pauper, again back to that poverty mindset, the pauper mindset, flawed, defective, imperfection, missing the target, the weed instead of the seed, burnable instead of fruit. Weeds don't produce fruit, and it absorbs soil and absorbs nutrients intended for fruit. So this is kicker shaver theory on human garden and tending your own garden. And this entire thing is going to put you in a place to where you can start adopting After you learn your own strengths and weaknesses, what you can do is you can go in and explore every single one of these and start adopting the strengths as you see them fit to your own life. And the best way to do it is to learn from people who are already successful doing it. So again, I'm going to send you back to my friend Douglas Blankenship. If you guys are looking for funding for particular projects, especially related to education, related to the cyber world and technology, related to robotics, related to green energies, feel free to contact me and we will see what we can do. Of course, the oil industry, if you have oil properties, contact Kicker Shaver or contact Tristan Pilato and we will put you in touch with the right people to get funding. So again, that's something that we're looking for in our projects through the Already Perfect Enterprises. Already got some people on target venture capital group interested. So I haven't talked a lot about that, but we do have some interested parties in funding this stuff. So if you guys want to get involved, it's a good time to do it. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, I have been your host, Kicker Shaver. And you know, if you've watched anything on here, you know that I particularly care about you and I want you to succeed from the things that I've succeeded from, and that's why I share them with you. So go check out kickershaver.com and the things I've been working on there. Download the Prezi app and get to exploring all of the things that I've put on there, page after page, time after time, that I've put into this, because it's you that I'm leaving the legacy for, and it's you who are here with me that I've been able to enjoy this with. So thank you all for being here. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. My name is Kicker Shaver, and you know I love you. Blessings on everything you do. This ends the supine episode of the Hippocrates temperament theory.